The number hits your phone before you're even fully awake. $12,846. That's what you owe. Not all at once, not loudly, just sitting there, quiet, patient. You swipe it away, make coffee, tell yourself it's manageable, and that's how it starts. Because debt doesn't feel like a crisis in the beginning. It feels like a tool, something useful, even smart, until it isn't. This is what your life looks like at every level of debt, and what's actually happening underneath, whether you see it or not. At zero debt, life is deceptively simple. You earn, you spend, what's left is yours. No interest, no deadlines chasing you in the background, no invisible bear ticking up while you sleep. But here's the catch. Zero debt often means limited access, no credit history, no leverage, no shortcuts. Yeah, you can't pull forward your future money. You have to wait. So you save for months to buy something others get instantly. It feels slow, almost unfair. And this is where most people make their first trade. They exchange time for access. Level 1 is controlled debt. This is where it looks like you're winning. A credit card, maybe two. You use them. You pay them off. On time. Every time. You earn points. Cash back. Airline miles you may or may not ever use. It feels like the system is paying you. And technically, it is. Because at this level, you're not the product. You're the exception. Banks love this version of you. Predictable, low risk, profitable in subtle ways. They make money from fees paid by merchants when you swipe your card, not from your interest, so you feel clever. And you're using debt without being used by it. But something shifts quietly here. You get comfortable spending money you don't physically have yet. You stop thinking in terms of, do I have this money? And start thinking, can I cover this later? That's a small mental change, but it opens a very big door. Level 2 is functional debt. Now you're financing things that matter. A car, education, maybe a phone you convinced yourself you needed for productivity. These are structured, predictable payments, fixed timelines. You know what you owe. You know when it ends. And here's where debt starts blending into your identity. You don't say, I owe money. You say, I have a car payment. I have student loans. It sounds normal. Because it is. This is where most adults live. And on paper, it makes sense. You're investing in mobility, in skills, in opportunity. But there's a quiet math problem forming in the background. Your future income is already partially spent. Every paycheck arrives, pre-divided. A slice goes to your past decisions before you even touch it. And as long as your income grows faster than your obligations, you don't feel it. But if it doesn't, the pressure starts building. Level 3 is revolving debt. This is where things stop being clean. Balances don't reset anymore. They roll over, month to month. Interest starts layering. And here's the uncomfortable part. At this level, the system changes how it treats you. You're no longer the exception. You're the model. Because this is where lenders make real money. Let's break the math simply. Now, say you owe $5,000 on a credit card with a 20% interest rate. If you only make minimum payments, you're not really paying off the debt. You're mostly paying the cost of carrying it. Interest quietly rebuilds what you just paid down, so your balance doesn't fall the way you expect. Time stretches, months turn into years, and suddenly that $5,000 purchase costs you $8,000, $10,000, sometimes more. Not because you bought more, but because time was rented. At a price you didn't fully feel up front. This is where people start to feel stuck, not because they're irresponsible, but because the system is designed to be easy to enter and slow to exit. Level 4 is compounding pressure. Multiple debts, different interest rates, different due dates, credit cards, personal loans, maybe a missed payment or two. Now your mental bandwidth gets involved. You're not just paying money, you're managing stress. Which bill comes first? What happens if you're late? Can you move things around this month? And here's where something subtle but powerful happens. Your decisions start optimizing for survival, not growth. You avoid risks, delay plans, say no to opportunities, because flexibility is gone. Every dollar has a job, and most of those jobs are already taken. This is also where the system becomes less forgiving. Late fees, penalty rates, lower credit scores, which leads to worse terms, higher interest, fewer options. It's not just that you owe money, it's that money becomes more expensive for you. That's the hidden mechanism. Debt doesn't just cost you interest, it changes the price of your future. Level 5 is critical debt. This is where the numbers stop feeling real. You avoid checking balances. You silence notifications. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later, because looking directly at it feels heavier than ignoring it. And at this level, the math is no longer working in your favor at all. Interest accumulates faster than you can realistically pay it down. Minimum payments barely touch the principal. And time, once your advantage, is now the thing making it worse. This is where people talk about debt traps, not as a metaphor, but as a structure, because the longer you stay here, the harder it becomes to leave. Not impossible, but expensive, in money, in time, in options. So what do you actually do? Not theoretically, not ideally, practically. First, you stop treating all debt the same, because it isn't. Some debt has a clear endpoint and predictable cost. Some debt is open-ended and constantly shifting. The second kind is the one that quietly expands. So you prioritize eliminating anything with high, compounding interest. Not because it feels urgent, but because mathematically it is. Second, you simplify. Fewer accounts, fewer due dates, fewer moving parts. Complexity is where mistakes happen, and mistakes are expensive here. Third, you force visibility, even when it's uncomfortable, because unclear numbers feel smaller than they are. Precise numbers, forced decisions. And finally, you change the timeline. Debt thrives on time when it's working against you. So the goal isn't just to pay, it's to shorten the duration, even slightly, because every extra month carries a cost, whether you notice it or not. But here's the part most people don't talk about. Debt isn't just financial, it's behavioral. It reflects how you trade present comfort for future constraint. And sometimes that trade makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't. The system isn't evil, but it is optimized to reward certain behaviors and quietly profit from others. So the real question isn't, is debt good or bad? It's much simpler. At what point does it stop working for you and start working on you? Because most people don't notice that moment when it passes, and by the time they do, the number on the screen isn't just a number anymore. It's a timeline, a one they didn't realize they were extending, and that timeline has a cost most people underestimate. Because once you start paying for the past, you lose flexibility over the future. You can still move forward, just slower, and that slowness compounds in ways that aren't obvious at first. You delay investing, you hesitate on opportunities, you prioritize stability over upside, not because you lack ambition, but because your margin for error is gone. Now zoom out for a second. This isn't just about individuals. This is an entire system built on the assumption that most people will carry some level of debt indefinitely. That's not an accident. It's predictable, because debt does something powerful for the economy. It pulls future consumption into the present. You don't wait 5 years to afford something. You buy it today, which keeps money moving, businesses growing, systems expanding. But the trade is subtle. Growth today, in exchange for obligations tomorrow. And when enough people make that trade at the same time, something interesting happens. The system becomes dependent on it. Consumption needs credit, and credit needs borrowers, which means the line between optional and necessary debt starts to blur. A car isn't just a purchase anymore, it's a monthly payment. Education isn't just a path, it's a balance. Even basic lifestyle expectations start assuming access to credit. So opting out completely feels unrealistic, and in many cases, it is. But here's where the contrast gets sharp. The same system that makes debt easy to access doesn't make escaping it easy. Approval is instant, relief is delayed. You can swipe in seconds. But unwinding that decision can take years, and that gap between speed in and slowness out is where most people lose control. Not all at once, gradually, quietly. There's also an irony most people miss. At lower levels, debt feels like freedom. You can do more, buy more, move faster. At higher levels, it becomes the opposite. It limits choices, narrows options, forces trade-offs. Same tool, different phase, completely different outcome. So if you step back and look at the full spectrum, debt isn't just a number. It's a shifting environment. At one level, it's leverage. At another, it's weight. And the transition between those two states isn't obvious when you're in it. There's no clear line, no notification that says you've crossed it, just small changes, payments that feel tighter, decisions that feel heavier, time that feels more expensive. And maybe that's the most important part. Debt doesn't collapse your life overnight. It reshapes it slowly, in ways that feel normal while they're happening, which is why most people don't ask the critical question early enough. Not, how much do I owe, but what is this costing me over time? Because the visible number is only part of it. There's also the missed options, the delayed moves, the things you don't even consider anymore because they don't fit your constraints. So here's where it leaves you. Some debt might make sense. Some might even be necessary. But none of it is neutral. Every level changes your timeline, your flexibility, your risk. And the system will always offer you more of it, easily, quietly, constantly. The only thing it won't do is tell you when you've had enough. So the question isn't whether you'll use debt at some point. Almost everyone does. The real question is much harder. How much of your future are you willing to pre-spend before you start running out of it?